Hello, this is Simon from Film Stories in what is increasingly being a series of videos where I'm just kind of thinking the world's going absolutely mad. And the cause this time, I'm going to look at an article on this screen here, which has popped up at the Hollywood Reporter. And the date of the article, let's have a look. That's October the 7th, 2024. Joker box office shocker. It reads, Folie à deux bombs with $37.8 million opening after receiving a D cinema score. Bombs with $37.8 million opening. You read a bit further down the article, you're just like, okay. And the article is making the point that the American box office returns of the new Joker film, which I'm going to call Joker 2 from this point onwards, because there's only so many times I can say folie à deux and not sound like a tit. It doesn't work with a Brummie accent, does it? And so the cause of this was that Joker has made less money than was expected, certainly in America. Interestingly, outside of America, the box office is holding up absolutely fine. That in fact, if I go down this article even more, the outside of America, another $81.1 million. The total global opening for its opening weekend for this box office bomb, $121.1 million. I would love a box office bomb like that. The world has gone absolutely mad. Now, the overall expected total now for the new Joker film, by the time it finishes in cinemas, is around $400 million for an R-rated movie, granted a superhero movie. And so, by most measurements, you'd be like, that isn't bad, is it? That'll do. We can work with that. The problem, of course, is the old weight of expectation thing. If you go back to the original Joker in 2019, that cost, deliberately, they slimmed the cost of that down to $55 million because they knew it was a gamble. Todd Phillips directing, hadn't done anything like that before. Joaquin Phoenix, they were going to do an R-rated film all about the Joker. One Oscar gold, $1 billion at the box office. That completely changed the perception of it. And we saw this a little bit with Aquaman as well. Aquaman grosses $1 billion. By the time you come to the second Aquaman, the expectations are just through the absolute roof. So the bottom line is the new Joker film is going to make about 40-50% of what the original movie did. And I understand that I'm no accountant. I don't live my life in Microsoft Excel, but even I can wrap my head around the fact that is a disappointment. That, however, is not a bomb. How are we getting into this kind of practice of a film that going to make $400 million at the box office being a bomb? Because also what that doesn't take into account is the earning doesn't stop once you've done the cinema release. In fact, the cinema release is probably the least profitable bit of a film's release. You go back to like the 80s and 90s, it was always said you make, oh God, there's a motorbike. You go back to the 80s and 90s, it was always said that the cinema release was basically the trailer for the film coming out on video. That's where you make your money. That go through the late 90s, the early 2000s, it was DVD. That's where you make your money. Even though those revenues have dissipated, there's still streaming. There is still physical media. You sell it to airlines. You sell it to hotels. You sell it in box sets forevermore. And with the best will in the world, they could have put out Joker 2, done it with stick figures, had them singing a bunch of nursery rhymes and gone home. And they could sell it in box sets forevermore. Your living proof of that is Batman and Robin has just reappeared in cinemas at the time this has been recorded. It keeps earning money. That was a box office bomb. Some bomb. I wish I could make box office bombs like that. This whole let's throw a film under the bus and call it a bomb, I mean, it's been commonplace for a long time. I frequently cite the example of 1995's Waterworld, starring Kevin Costner, directed by Kevin Reynolds. To this day, I see clickbait articles telling me what it's one of the biggest turkeys and box office bombs of all time. It's just like, the best will in the world. It made a profit. What is your definition of a bomb? What is your and I don't mean in the explosive sense, but what is your definition of a box office bomb? Do you mean something that's like lost a ton of money when it was expected to make a lot of money? I could wrap my head around that. But even the reporting of that is so short term. Do you remember when films like The Lone Ranger and Tomorrowland came out of Disney, and Disney was issuing corporate write-downs, they called them, didn't they? Because they hadn't made as much money as was expected in the first 3 months. John Carter as well, that was another one. And so it issued a statement basically doing a corporate write-down for within 3 months of the film coming out. Never mind that the film will continue earning, as all of those have, like 10 years into the future. I mean, they're still bringing money into the Disney coffers. I don't see them not on Disney Plus and bolstering the catalogue there. It's just this immediacy to determine whether something has been a commercial success or a commercial failure. At the point this has been recorded, it's a couple of weeks since the 30th birthday of The Shawshank Redemption was being celebrated. Barely anyone went to see that at the cinema. I did, went opening night, that notwithstanding. Barely anyone went to see that at the cinema. Would you call that a bomb? I mean, you would have done by this definition on the initial release. Would you do it now? No, of course you wouldn't. The reason this is a problem, and the reason I think we're misdiagnosing this thing of like 400 million is a disappointment, is this affects the decisions for the films that are going to be made in the next like year or two. Movie executives are reading that and say, and it's not like I want a Joker 3 or anything like that, but they're reading it and just say, well, we can't make films like that. That's a financial disappointment now. And it's just like, no, the short-termism's got to come out of it. However, all the Hollywood studios now are owned by conglomerates or a part of conglomerates that have to issue quarterly corporate reports to shareholders. And, I mean, the money's got to come in fast and often, otherwise everything's a disappointment. Set against that, I'd like to highlight the fact that the New York-based distributor Bleecker Street is celebrating its 10th anniversary this month, I think it is. And it's done so by hand-picking films and then gently curating them and accepting that these films might take time to make their money back. You know, the thinking is slightly different, and I appreciate that doesn't always scan at the blockbuster end of things. But even so, the thought that Warner Brothers is in the end going to be out of pocket on Joker 2, I mean, at least they didn't delete it, right, is quite something. I mean, it's just not. This is a major international company that is selling all sorts of tie-ins and add-ons and stuff around Joker 2. It's not going to suffer. The film has not bombed, and I just think, particularly when it's such a struggle now to get films into cinemas and attract big audiences to them at the same time, can't we just like reframe this a little more? And I keep going back to words that Chris Pine said. And Chris Pine was talking about the 3 Star Trek films that he's made to date and about resetting the expectation. Because what happened throughout the 2010s in particular is Marvel films reset the expectation that a comic book movie in particular should be making $1 billion. Joker set that expectation as well. I should note it didn't help Warner Brothers that it tripled the budget on Joker 2. Now it's a much bigger film, so it has to make much more money. I don't know quite why it couldn't be made the same way as Joker, which kind of worked to the favour of the film, but again, I don't make the decisions, not my Christmas party on the line. But going back to Chris Pine, he was talking about the Star Trek films. And what he said, he told Deadline, I always think that Star Trek should operate in the zone that is smaller. And his words, I'm going to read them here. It says, it's not a Marvel appeal. It's like, let's make the movie for people that love this group of people, that love this story, that love Star Trek. Let's make it for them. And then if people want to come to the party, great. But make it for a price which has been proven to be possible by, ironically, the first Joker, so that if it makes $500 million, that's really good. Imagine that. We're in a world where a film, an individual film making $500 million, is not regarded as good. Is regarded, if anything, as a disappointment, as a bomb. Now, I'm not naive. It's like when Sony's The Amazing Spider-Man 2 made less money than The Amazing Spider-Man 1, it was down to what? It still grossed $700 million at the global box office. I get it's a disappointment. I get they're reframing the expectations, changing slightly the films they have to make. But it's not a bomb. This label is just not helpful to films. A film like Town and Country, directed by Peter Chelsom, has done terrific films. Hear My Song is a great film, but that was the Warren Beatty one that cost about 90, 100 million for a fairly steadfast drama and then made nothing. That, if you must, is a box office bomb because it's going to lose people a lot of money, to the point where they can't afford to make films again. You know, they can't afford to try something like that. It knocks people out of investing in the industry. That kind of financial failure. And again, it's irrespective of the quality of the film. I know people who like the film. It's just the fact that in comes this label. And I think headlines such as The Hollywood Reporter telling us that Joker 2 is a bomb, it's just not helpful. It's short-term clickbait, in my view. And I think the movie industry, which has been, you know, under significant pressure from streaming, I see that, but the cinema, the theatrical industry needs to just reframe this. Also, on the other side of it, I should know, at the point this has been recorded, Beetlejuice is the top, still in the top 10, the top 3, I think, in the US box office after over a month on release. Another 10 million. It's done, what, around $250 million just at the US box office. And Warner Brothers has sent it straight to video on demand now, while it's still number 3 at the box office. It's not quite gelling for me, but I do know this. First of all, that whatever you think of Joker, even if Joker have made £5, a couple of packs of sweets and a can of Pepsi Max at the box office, it would go on making money forever. Nobody is going to be poor as a result of it only, I did that, oh hate me, making $400 million at the box office. Secondly, this stuff does matter. It does matter because the people who make the decisions are reading these headlines and it just doesn't help. Thirdly, they took a swing with it. Whether you like the film or not, they took a gamble with it. Fourthly, they made it for an enormous amount of money. 3 times the cost of the original film. I don't quite know why. And fifthly, you know, if there's a film out there, I've forgotten where my point originally was even, but if there's a film out there at the cinema that you want to see and support, just go and see it anyway. I do always think this, and if a film is doing well at the cinema, keep it in the cinema. Keep it in the cinema. The cinema has a prestige, has a premium to it. It remains the best place, I think, to see a film. I think, ironically enough, we're shortchanging cinema with the Joker headline. We're shortchanging cinema by taking Beetlejuice out. Well, they're not taking it out of cinemas, but putting it onto on-demand as quickly as Warner Brothers have. I don't have the answers for all of this. I just look at this and I just think it's cyclical. It's like in 5 years' time, we're going to have a film that makes $800 million and we'll sit there, oh, isn't it terrible? I mean, it's madness. It's madness. It does not have to be this way. And, you know, if you're just looking for something, I want to end this with, if you're looking for something just a little offbeat that's made for barely anything, that I discovered via a cinema that made far less at the box office than Joker, and no one's calling a bomb, dig out the film Hundreds of Beavers. I'm not telling you anything about it. I will say it's clean. It's not as bad as it. The title is a little bit misleading, but also not misleading at all. But cinema is actually in 2024 healthier than it's been for many, many years, and that includes Joker bringing 400 million into the pot. You know, a great believer in every little helps as well, but also let's just call it as it is, not what the clickbait algorithm is demanding we do. I'll stop moaning now. All right.